Even though I barely use social media and barely check news websites, somehow, every time I'm on social media or checking a news website, I see a lot of nostalgia. And a lot, I really think, is actually an understatement. It's everywhere. And some of the ones I see are totally bizarre. Like, I see people reminiscing on fall 2023 because of the mediocre rap music and the mediocre video games that got dropped back then. Like, what are we doing? In this video, I'm going to talk about nostalgia. First, I'm going to talk about the reasons why I think people are nostalgic. Then I'm going to talk about why it is not a good thing that young people are nostalgic. And then I'm going to talk about solutions for this nostalgia and how people can move forward. First, I'm going to get into why I think people are nostalgic. The first reason is very obvious. Some stuff that people are reminiscing on really was fun. I absolutely agree with everyone who thinks that culture in the 2010s was way better than culture in the 2020s. In particular, people in the 2010s were more genuine. It seemed more natural, and it seemed like people were actually having fun. In the 2020s, everything just seems so forced. There's also the added factor of thinking back to the times before being an adult. Both having that childlike innocence of the world around us is rainbows and sunshine. And on top of that, not having any sort of real responsibility or any real problems. And then the ultimate factor to add to all of those is a lot of times when people are being nostalgic, they're talking about the times before COVID lockdowns. At some point, I'm going to make a video about how life changed post-lockdowns. But right now, all that really needs to be said is, of course, I totally understand why people would think about times like 2018 and 2019 when they were outside doing everything without any restrictions, when people weren't just mental slaves to the internet. I totally understand why people would look back on those times and reminisce and get nostalgic and miss it. It totally makes sense to me. But ultimately, for fully grown adults, in particular young adults in their 20s, nostalgia is lame. The number one reason nostalgia is lame is when people look back on the past, they're only remembering the good parts with a filtered lens, and they are not remembering the bad parts at all. A great example of this is video games. I totally agree when people say that video games are worse now than they were 10 to 15 years ago. I'm absolutely with people on that. But at some level, people are not thinking about the whole picture. The best example of that would be video game prices. Everyone's talking about how video games are more expensive now, and I don't necessarily think they're right. Think about Call of Duty back in the day on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. They would charge you $60 for the game, and then they would charge you an additional $60 for the DLC maps. That was $120 every single year. It's easy for kids from the suburbs to think video games are more expensive now and that they're getting screwed in a unique way now, when in the past, they weren't the ones paying for the video games themselves. And I think it's funny that people think a company like Activision at one point was like some total saint company that cared so much about their customers. No, it was always about profit. And that's where people are looking at it through a lens of they're thinking about enjoying the video game and having fun playing the video game, and somehow they're applying that to Activision. It doesn't really add up, and it's almost like an excuse for them to be nostalgic as opposed to realizing what it really was the entire time. Another great example of people being nostalgic around video games is how people look back at Call of Duty trick-shotting. I trick-shotted myself. I had a whole lot of fun doing it. And I definitely get nostalgic about it. I definitely go back and watch the videos every once in a while because to this day, the videos are awesome. And when I look back on trick-shotting, of course the first thing I remember is how much fun I had doing it. I love playing six-mans with my friends, messing around, having fun, creating funny instant fails moments. The rush of hitting a shot, it was always so fun to hit a shot. It was so exciting. And I loved the montages. Absolutely loved them. To this day, I still love them. But whether it's me or other people, when people reminisce on trick-shotting, they absolutely forget some of the downsides. For example, there was always clip faking going on. People were getting rewarded, joining big name teams, faking clips, while people who were doing it legitimately were getting shut out, and they were working hard, but they didn't get the opportunity they deserved. In addition, at some point around 2014, the whole debate around standards and the type of trick shots people were hitting, it really did get toxic and messed up. It was, unless you hit some insane complex trick shot, like you were some bum loser who had no idea what you were doing and you should just put down the controller forever. And that really drove a large part of the community away from trick shotting, that overwhelming negativity. And then, once people started complaining about the standards, that's when people started faking clips left and right just to meet the standards. So people like to think about trick shotting like it was all rainbows and sunshine. And of course, a whole lot of it was fun, just like I've said in this video. But ultimately, people really do forget how negative it became and how it all became quite literally fake. I'm definitely going to make a video at some point about trick shotting and how I think it was actually the perfect look into the future for what the internet has looked like ever since. But for now, I think that totally hammers home the point of nostalgia and how people only look at the positive things but don't consider the negative ones. And again, just to say one more time, trick shotting was awesome. Even to this day, I go back and watch the montages because those montages are that good. And in particular, the music that was used in the Call of Duty community was amazing. Now I'm going to talk about another part of people's lives that they look back on with way too much of a positive view, and they do not remember any of the negative things. And that is high school. In my opinion, the number one reason people get nostalgic about high school is because of their friends. Unfortunately, as we get older, people don't get to see each other as much anymore. And that's absolutely where people get nostalgic about high school, and I totally get it. But there were a lot of negative parts of high school that people seem to totally forget. The first part is when people think about their friends, they don't think about the kids they didn't like. Me personally, I'm lucky. I went to a high school where I actually liked pretty much everybody, and there were very few quote-unquote bad apples, so to speak. Pretty much everyone was a nice person to talk to. You could have an enjoyable conversation. But I know some kids who were not as lucky as me, did not go to high schools anywhere near as nice. And when they think about high school, they're totally thinking about those kids they don't like. But I've noticed a lot of kids just think about their friends, and they don't think about those kids they didn't like. And unfortunately, some of those kids were so poorly behaved that just having one of those poorly behaved kids in your class could just ruin the whole class dynamic, could ruin the entire student body. They could really just bring everyone down. Combined with the fact, a lot of teachers just aren't nice people and take those jobs so they can be mean to teenagers. They want control over teenagers and they want to be nasty to them. Like, yeah, sure, you had fun with your friends at break, had fun with your friends after school, this, that, the other. But sitting in class with some nasty teacher who probably wasn't even teaching you anything, that was pretty lame. Doing that Monday through Friday for 4 years, it doesn't get more overrated than that. In particular, because at least me specifically, I look back on high school and everything I quote unquote learned in high school was covered at some point when I was in either middle school or college. So truly, all they were doing was wasting my time. We would sit there in class and do literally nothing. Like we'd watch some stupid movie or whatever, and then we'd get hours of homework from each class. It was a total joke. And I look back on extracurriculars and I think to myself, so where did that get any of us? All these people who play a sport in high school day after day after day, just for when the moment they graduate high school, they basically never do it again. What's the point of that? Personally, I don't really know. So although I look back at high school and I definitely miss the fun part of hanging out with my friends and having good laughs, we were definitely laughing all the time, had some super funny jokes. While I do absolutely miss that, I do not miss wasting my time in class. And in hindsight, although I did enjoy sports and band and the extracurriculars I did specifically, It really was because of the kids. We were laughing and joking, having a good time. And hey, I will say, playing the drums is something I still benefit from today, for sure. Absolutely. But for everything I benefited from in high school, there was definitely a lot I did not benefit from. If you're watching this and you're thinking about high school and you truly did enjoy high school, you loved all the kids at your school, your teachers were awesome, you enjoyed your extracurriculars, that's great, and I'm definitely not trying to take that away from you. But when it comes to nostalgia, people absolutely remember only the positive things about high school, and typically they forget the negative things. Now, I'm going to talk about why I think people in their 20s being nostalgic is lame. First of all, at some level, it's depression. People are reminiscing about the past because they think it was all rainbows and sunshine and they want to go back to a time where they were totally happy as opposed to dealing with the problems they have nowadays that make them sad. Like I said earlier in the video, I totally understand how people currently in their 20s would reminisce about times before lockdowns with a big fat smile on their face and miss it. I miss it too. And especially when you combine reminiscing about the past before lockdowns with the current present, it's a really bad combo. The future looks very bleak for people in their 20s right now. It's really messed up. It's basically impossible for someone in their 20s to work a 9 to 5 and be able to pay their own bills. Which, if we can't just pay for a simple apartment right now, then we have no hope of ever becoming a homeowner or really just moving up in the world, period. But I do think a lot of this stems from totally overthinking. It's too much thinking and not enough action. Staring at social media all day has left people mentally paralyzed. But to me personally, that's exactly what I think is so lame about people in their 20s being nostalgic. Fully grown adults control their own lives. I remember being a teenager in high school and having basically no say in my life and the decisions that were being made around me. Now in my 20s, I would never want to go back to being a teenager because I wouldn't want to go back to a time where I wasn't in control of my own life. Now in my 20s, I'm in control of my own life, and that's how I want it to be. People in their 20s should want to go forward, and that starts with setting goals and objectives. Like me personally, one of the many things I'm doing now is starting this channel. When I finish making one of these commentaries, I always feel a sense of accomplishment that makes me feel great. But unfortunately, too many people in their 20s just spend all their time staring at social media. They're not accomplishing anything. So of course they feel terrible. My advice to anyone who is feeling too nostalgic is to set goals and work towards them every day. Even if that's as simple as, I'm going to go to the gym a few times a week. Just setting one goal and working towards it, I promise you, to anyone out there who's too nostalgic, it will immediately make you feel better about the present. And my last point is that we still have plenty to be grateful for. I mean, whether it's me making this video and then uploading it, or the person watching who clicked on it, having internet access, being to communicate with anybody all over the world, it's truly incredible, and it's something that no one in human history has ever had before, except for our generation. And that's just one of the many things we have to be grateful for, like access to good food, clean water, and a bunch of other stuff. To summarize, although I totally understand why people in their 20s are getting nostalgic, ultimately, being nostalgic in your 20s is lame. Because as someone in your 20s, you are in control of your life. You get to choose what you do every day. So do what makes you happy. Hopefully you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next video.